This morning Lisa read from the Old Testament, from the Song of Solomon, which is the book that we often read about on Valentine's Day and on relationships. And it's that man and woman relationship, but it says, always keep me in your heart and wear this bracelet to remember me by. The passion of love and bursting into flame is more powerful than death, stronger than the grave. Love cannot be drowned by oceans or floods. It cannot be bought, no matter what is offered. And you go, well, so where's the story of jealousy and envy there? Where is it? Sounds like a pretty nice thing. And the point is, this is the setup. This is what love is. This is the standard. We are always to keep, if this is our relationship with Christ, to keep Him in our heart, to wear this bracelet, this mark, this symbol in your life. The passion of our love for Christ should be bursting into flame. It should be more powerful than death and stronger than the grave. Love cannot be drowned. It cannot be bought, no matter what is offered. It shouldn't be compromised. And then in Galatians in 5, verse 26, we only had one, but it was pretty clear. But don't be conceited or make others jealous by claiming to be better than they are. Pretty simple. That was Paul writing to the church at Galatia, and it was certainly an issue. That's why Paul was writing it. And then those last verses in Matthew, the story of the vineyard, which we've so often heard, and it's very familiar to memory to many of us, is that on that evening, the owner of the vineyard had told the man in charge to call the workers in and to pay them. And he started with those who'd been hired first. And we know the story. There were some hired early in the morning at like 9 o'clock. And they worked all day long. And, you know, we'll come back and look at that in a sec, but kind of think of it as if you've ever worked a union job and you had to go to union hall and sit and wait to be called in. And you get called in, you get there, and you get the job. And you work whatever you get. Well, this idea, this 7 deadly sins, is many weeks ago, it seems like now, we started with the first one, which was pride, and we said pride was the root of all of the 7 deadly sins. It was interesting, we were out last night and the question came up of what they were, and I couldn't remember. I think I remembered 4 or 5 of the 7, and I could never remember them all. Wasn't something that in the Methodist Church we taught in catechism. My Catholic friends usually have them down there pretty good. But it came up that, pride is a sin? And often we think, well, pride is something that we should feel good about, we should feel confident about. And we talked several weeks ago, if you remember, that in and of itself, God gives us pride as a positive emotion. Yet we usually turn that around and it becomes, we can do it, we don't need God. Because we consider ourselves to be God. You know, so we started this with this pride being the root. So today we talk about envy, or in the translation that we would use is jealousy. And jealousy and envy is a spirit of complaint and murmuring. Now, a lot of us think it simply means that we wish that we had what somebody else had. But in its true definition, envy and jealousy are simply complaining and murmuring. And murmuring. And it's usually because somebody's got something better than what we have. So, why is envy one of the 7 deadly sins? Well, I got thinking about when I was teaching middle school and teaching high school, how many times, probably if I had a nickel for every time that some school kid got in a fight, because I heard that somebody said something about me or my mother. They didn't hear it, but they heard that somebody else said that they were complaining about the way he acted, or the way he did this, or the way he didn't do that, or the way he didn't do the other thing. And it ended up creating a big problem. I mean, think about in our marriages, or with our kids. How many times do we sometimes just stand around and go, what is with my family? Why can't they be more like? Or maybe we often see, this situation. Well, if you would only be more like Joanna up the street, You know, our marriage wouldn't be so bad. She doesn't nag, she doesn't do this, she doesn't... The house is clean, it's wonderful. Oh yeah, it's wonderful from where we stand. And then the return comment is, well, you know, if you were more like her husband Joe, and you could fix things, and you could repair the car, and you could do this, we could save thousands of dollars a year, and it wouldn't always be in the shop. What about those kids? As much as we love our kids, we sometimes look around and say, man, I just wish that my kids were a little bit more like somebody else. Or even if it isn't a specific individual, we wish they were more like. We wish maybe they called a little more often. It's not a bad thing, but it becomes envy when, because they don't call and your best friend's daughter and son call all the time, now we're jealous. It's not like, oh, that works for them, this works for us. I wish it was different, I wish it would come there. Wishing it was coming and wishing it was better is different than we idolize someone else over our own relationship. And guess what happens? Our relationship gets lost. Because we spend all of our time wishing they were more like somebody else instead of taking what we have where we have. Think about it. What if God looked at us and had envy? What if God said, Rick, I just wish you were more like, and listed a whole long line of pastors? I'm not saying that he probably does it once in a while. But at that point, if God always wished us to be like someone else, then he'd never choose us. And yet he's chosen each and every one of us. You know, that whole thing, our kids are our kids. We married who we married. Our house is our house. We don't get to go home to somebody else's house. We don't get to drive home in somebody else's car. It is just the way it is. We can work to change it. We can work to leave it the same. But if we spend our time wishing it was more like somebody else's, then we're not getting anything out of our life, and we're certainly not getting any more out of their life. Not that we can't grow those things. Not that we can't talk to our spouses, to our friends, and say, hey, I wish we could do these things more. I wish to our kids that you would call once in a while. I wish these kind of things. But there's a difference in working on relationships, building them and changing them, and envying others. One of the authors I read, his third point, he listed, he said, jealousy and envy are products of our carnal hearts, and we must be overcome by the power of God's Spirit and love. Kind of threw in, it's the old bracelet, WWJ, the JD said, what would Jesus do? Imagine this. Gee, Peter, why couldn't you be more like the others? You're always asking to walk on the water. You're always asking to be the center of attention. Peter, can't you be more like James? Can't you be more like John? John's kind of conceited, but, he's not always pestering me. He's just happy with himself. Can you imagine that? Jesus would have then had 12 robots instead of 12 apostles. They all would have been the same. He would have made them all exactly the same, but he didn't. Because he knew that God's creation was not all the same. He knew that we needed each to have an apostle with which we could identify. He knew people needed to hear the word in different ways. We needed to view our relationships like Jesus did. Sure, did Peter frustrate him? This past week on the Methodist Church is running a Lenten trivia quiz. And if you go to the BWC site on Facebook and you pick it up, you'll get a question each week. And today was, or the past week was, who did Jesus say, "Get thee behind me," to when he said Satan? And it said, was it Satan? Was it? And if you remember, it was Peter. It was Peter. He literally called Peter Satan. But he never once said, I wish you'd act more like Nathaniel. He took him where he was, as he was, and he worked with him, and he grew him, and he molded him. This is what our relationship with God is like, and our families is like. So what he says, if you're so wrapped up in trying to model them like someone else, you only see that job performance. You only see that marriage and those children, those kids from our point of view. You don't live with them. You don't really know. Jealousy and envy are devices of the devil, and they only bear bad fruit. I mean, think about it. Can you ever think anything good came out of looking at someone else and saying, I wish you were more like... And my guess is that was immediately followed with some attack right back at you. Well, if you want to be so, you want me so like somebody else, then why don't you go with so-and-so? When our focus is on others, we neglect the relationships that He's actually given us and blessed us with. Our focus is on outdoing others instead of putting God in charge of our life. We tend to push Him out. You know what's really interesting is one of the lists was we seem to envy the very things that mess up our relationship. We envy the ungodly. And you go, well, no, Rick, I really don't do that. Well, think about this. Think about this. How folks do you know, I don't get it. So-and-so up the street, they call out sick all the time at work. They're out. I know they're out partying, they're getting drunk at night, they're driving, they never get caught, they never do this. And, I don't get it. Why does God let them get away with all of this stuff? So what are we saying? Do we want to be ungodly like them? Is that really what we're asking? Or are we just angry because God's not punishing them right now? That envy's got us all distorted. We're all mixed up. What is the story? Why is it that we care that certain people seem to get away with murder, which we wouldn't want to do anyway, but yet we're jealous of that? I can't believe they get away with all that stuff. If I did that, I'd be caught that fast. If we raised kids, we'd probably know that if we had 3 different kids, that one of them got caught every time he did something wrong, and the other one got away with everything, and we never even knew about it. It's just amazing. So we go out, and we look at them, and we say, they never get sick, They do all of this, they do all of that, and everything seems to work out for them. I don't get it. But really, instead, what we should envy is that person who has the relationship with Jesus, that we go, wow, look at that relationship. Look at the way that they're able to pray. Look at the way they actually fast. Look at what they're doing. Look at the knowledge they have of God's Word. I heard this past couple of weeks that we've been out. There was a discussion on Reverend Dr. Graham and all the things that he did that were good, but one of the things that he often realized that he was never the biblical scholar, believe it or not, that others were. And he never claimed to be. His doctorate and all was in evangelism and preaching and more in the gospel and less, but yet his preaching always said that ultimately it came down to, and the Bible said, you will be forgiven if you come to Jesus. He didn't envy the difference. He acknowledged the difference in spiritual gifts. And he certainly never idolized the ungodly. Jealousy and envy, they provide motivation for wrongdoing. Well, you know what? If they're getting all that, then I need to get mine. We've almost reached that in a society to the point that there are programs and things for people who are in need of help, and yet now we have reached the point that, you know what? I've paid into this all my life, it's my turn to get mine, and yet there's nothing wrong with us. I've worked recently in the last year and found out that there's someone I know who's working toward getting disability. Probably 35-year-old male. Pretty able-bodied, overweight, able to do things, got some job skills. But he and his family are pursuing disability because it's been hard to get a job. Wow. So and his comment is more like, well, there's a whole bunch of people with disability don't belong on there. I might as well get mine. He's envious of something that he doesn't even respect. He really wanted a job. But he's envious of those who are getting paid for not having a job. So he decides, I'll get mine. Can you begin to see why the ancient church said envy was certainly one of the 7 deadly sins? Because when we become wrapped up in it, we lose focus on what God really wants us to be doing. Let's take some time and look at the Bible for some good examples in envy. And see how it worked out for them. So how did that envy with Cain and Abel work out? Said how did that work out when Cain and Abel were there, and then he gets everything. He's just the better brother. And all of us who are brothers or sisters with somebody, there's always we have a running battle, and you all know my youngest brother Scott. He always likes to tease and play. Well, I'm the baby, and I've always been the favorite. And we play that, and it makes them furious whenever he does it. Stop that! And he just plays it. But we also know that that's there. It comes in. How about Joseph and his brothers? Here's Joseph who could interpret dreams. He's the baby of the family. All the big brothers, they just look at him and go, oh, you little runt, you're just so annoying, you're always tagging on. We're busting our butt in the field. We're working and we're carrying on, and Daddy's got you in the house in your pretty little rainbow coat. Isn't that nice? Gee, how bad did that destroy that family? Wow. They sold their brother into slavery because they were jealous. Mary and Martha. Remember Jesus coming in, and Mary and Martha there, and they're running around the house, and they're trying to get ready for all the guests, and Anna Ortena is cooking, and she's fixing everything, and the other one's just sitting at Jesus' feet going, the Savior of the world. And she's like, do you look at my sister? Do you look at... And Jesus was like, relax. Everyone has their place and their gift. Use your spiritual gifts where they are. The other one in the Bible that didn't work out so well was the story of the prodigal son. Wow. The prodigal son runs off, takes everything he has, takes his inheritance, goes off, and then when he comes back, they throw the big party, put the ring on his finger, they kill the fatted calf, and what does the older son do? The older son just gets furious with his father. You never gave me anything, he said. Wow, can you imagine how the father felt? And yet, you've lived here all this time. You've had access to everything that I have. You're right, we didn't specifically throw a party for you, but you participated in everything that I have. Your envy has clouded you from seeing the real good relationship. The cure for jealousy and envy is to pray more for God's love. It's to be more like Jesus. It's actually a point in my career that I was closest to the woman I worked with for so long. And we had both reached the point that we were being recognized for a lot of things in our accomplishments. And to this day, haunts me. Because she did a little better job of selling herself than what I did. I'm kind of a sit back and you ought to notice it if it's good. And we ultimately both ended up receiving the same awards before our careers had ended up. But obviously, you can't get them at the same time. You know, there can only be one winner of the Super Bowl, you know, in 2014. Maybe our turn will come the next. Well, hers came first. And I didn't handle it well. And it changed our relationship for a long, long time. Envy is a deadly sin. It really is. When we look at these words here, at the end of the day, the owner of the vineyard, he said to the boss of all the workers, call them and pay them. Start with the last, the ones that we hired, and end with the ones I hired first. And when the workers were hired at 5 o'clock, they got their money, and they received pay. Apparently everybody was in the same room, because that's the only way the others would have known. So the others said they came in and they got 8 hours pay. And the others were going, wow, if he gave them 8 hours pay, then I guess we're now going to make more. Even though we agreed at 9 o'clock in the morning to work for 8 hours pay. No one got cheated here. No one got cheated. So the second group comes up and they gave them 8 hours pay. Now, if that first group had been at all smart, the wheels should have started turning, and they should have realized, okay, it looks like maybe everybody's going to get the same thing. But no. They had worked harder, so they were better than the first group. Gee, aren't you glad that us getting into heaven doesn't matter whether we've been a Christian longer than someone else? That, you know, sometimes it's hard to take to think that those on the deathbed conversion get the same thing that we do. But that's what Jesus was saying here. So then it comes down, the first ones are coming up. They were promised 8 hours pay, but now they've convinced themselves, well, if you gave these others more, technically, I'm going to get more. And what happened? They ruined their relationship with the master. They became angry. They were jealous because the others got the exact same thing that they got. They didn't get any more. They just worked less. But they got no more. Envy ruined it. The scary thing is the last part of envy is, you know, the Bible says God gets jealous. But He gets jealous when we love things more than we love Him. When we love things more than we love service in His name. We love things more than we love our relationships that He's given us. Envy is truly one of the 7 deadly sins, and in our society, almost encouraged. You can't watch Survivor, you can't watch anything without this backstabbing and challenging and all of this kind of stuff. Satan is what lives in envy and jealousy. That's why the ancient church said it is one of the 7 deadly sins.